Thank you. Well, guys, we've got a little bit less than an hour. We'll probably use the whole hour, but as we're thinking about that, you know, we've got a small family here that we want to just kind of visit about this a little bit together. What are you hoping to get out of the day? There's a reason that you guys showed up today. There's a reason that you spent your time. Now, I know most of that is because they have great catering today, that we've got some fabulous food. But the other part of that, what do you hope that we'll get out of today? Why did you come? Go ahead, jump
Probably
in.
just to, I've been selling my whole life. I mean, I even came 3 months early because I was ready, you know. I mean, that's how I've been, and I've been doing it the same way for 35 years.
Okay.
So it's probably time that I brush up on I mean, I heard last week they have indoor plumbing in most of these buildings. I'm not sure about it, so that's why.
So 35 years of doing it the same way, is there maybe something that's different that might be like indoor plumbing, as convenient as that? So, all right, we'll definitely talk about that today. What are some of the other reasons? Why'd you get up and spend your time, energy, and resources to be here?
Learn something new.
Learn something new. So can't promise that today. Some of the stuff we're going to talk about today might be just common sense, right? Some of it might just be common sense, but there might be some stuff that we're going to talk about. One of the biggest things is a little bit of a illusion in this idea of sales training is that typically if I go out there and I actually do some sales training, I sign up for something online or whatever, it's going to be what's the words, what's the hit, what's the thing that you say to them, and bam, you wrestle them to the ground and they are closed. I was going through some ads the other day. I was helping a friend out online for salespeople, and the biggest thing that's in any of those is we're looking for closers, not looking for losers. We're looking for closers, right? It's not how well they do everything in the world. It's just, can you get that guy to do what you want him to do so we can get the money and extract it from them, because that's who we're hiring. And if you're not that guy, don't show up here. Have you guys seen those ads?
Yes.
Right? You talk to people like that. So if that's what you're looking for, they're probably going to miss that. The reality is we don't believe in our world that the sales interaction is really that tiny little scope at the end where it turns into a high pressure push, and it's uncomfortable typically for us as the salespeople and for the person who's on the other end of that. So today we're really going to talk about communication. So whether you are in sales or a sales role, all of us in our company, in our families, in our life have this tendency to communicate. We're really going to talk about what's a communication system. How does that work and how is that maybe different? So whether I'm in leadership or management, kind of important to have some communication skills when I'm doing that. Whenever there's two people in a room, there's something that's going on where one person's typically trying to influence the other person. You know, my wife and I we did this last night. So what do you want? I don't know. What do you want? Right? Eventually you say, because this is always the way. I don't know what you want. I don't know. If somebody says, well, Chinese. Well, I really don't feel like Chinese. It doesn't, but anything else is fine. Okay, well, how about we just run by and get some barbecue beef? I really don't feel like barbecue beef, right? And there's that play that goes on. That's a sales interaction between a couple of people. We talked about marketing, and last week we went through kind of the idea of how do you set up a marketing plan and frame that out last month. But everything that happens ahead of time until I actually have a conversation, it's my marketing. But the sales begins when I actually engage somebody. And everything having to do with the way I communicate and how I talk to them, that's all the sales stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to go through some stuff a little bit fast just to kind of set some framework for you. You guys have got a handout on your tables. You've got pens there if you'd like to use that. If you'll open that up right now to the first page, that first sheet is going to have a title at the top of it. It's called the hot sheet. I don't know if you've had experience with this before, but this is where we think the ideas that I hear today, there's a couple things I know for sure. No matter how brilliant I might seem to you, you're going to walk out of here and you're not going to remember everything that I told you. I know that sounds stunning, but I know for sure that's not going to happen. But I also know that while we spend some time together, there's going to be a couple of things I'm going to share that you're going to think, I need to remember that. That's going to be important. That's what that list is for. So I'm going to start you out with a couple of things to put on there, a couple of pairs of words. The first one I want you to think about is proactive versus reactive. Jot that down. Proactive versus reactive. In the world of sales, when I engage with something, with somebody, that's proactive. Much of what we do in the world of marketing has to do with reactive. I put my information out there. I put my messages out there. And typically, in the marketing part of it, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for somebody to come in and get a hold of me and say, yes, I want to talk to you, and have that conversation. But proactive is, what am I doing really to see the human beings that are in my circles? How is my mindset different, that I am awake and I'm alert to the opportunities that are around me? So proactive versus reactive. Second set of words, help versus sell. Help versus sell. Help is this concept that I want to do something that will be good and better for you because it's what you want. Anybody ever try to help somebody that doesn't want to be helped? How fun is that, right? You're using your time and your energy and you're expending that on somebody and they don't want the help. And you can see the tragedy, but they can't. That happens. And sometimes, when we approach that, we can be that person. But the reality is what we're trying to do is really do something that's positive for that person and make it about that person. When we use the word sell, do we think about that? Do we think about that idea of help, or do we think about, I want to get them to do what I want them to do? Right? That's kind of the concept and the framework that we put sell in. So not everybody does it that way, but that's part of the thought. A couple of things I want you to think about, and this one I'm going to encourage you to jot down. As we go through today, there's a couple of things I know. Like I said, you're not going to get everything. Today is about getting some information, but the actual opportunity to take it out of here and do something with it, that's going to be up to you. So this is about how we learn. I'm going to give you a little acronym right here, and I'll give you some words to go with that. So on your hot list there, jot down that ACASH. If you're not familiar with it, haven't memorized it, it's not part of what you guys do, jot that down. The first A stands for awareness. It stands for awareness. Most of us, if we're going to change, and this is the process for human beings, this is how we change, I've got to be aware that I need to make a change before I'm going to put any effort or dynamic into changing. The next one stands for knowledge. The K stands for knowledge. If I find something that I need to do, I'm going to go out there and find that knowledge and begin to do something with it. At least I think I'm going to. I'm going to go read a book. I'm going to do something. And that's mostly what we're doing today, is awareness and knowledge. And for most people, that's where life is going to stop. Because we have this thing in the Western culture that if I know it, I can do it. If I know what Tom Brady's doing when he fades back, I could do that. Until you try to do it, and you do a face plant. And that's what happens to a lot of us. I don't know why I didn't do it, because I know how to do it. There's something that has to happen with our physiology and our body and our voice and everything else to make that happen. And that's going to be application. That's your next A. Got to try it. How do most things go the first time that you try them? You've never done them before? Downhill, badly. They typically do. Anytime we try something new, it usually does not go well. And here's what happens typically. We get great knowledge, we spend all this time getting this knowledge, and then we go out and try it, we do a face plant, and it hurts, and we're embarrassed, or whatever it is, and we stop, and we go, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. But if we're brave enough to keep going, it will eventually become what the S is, which is a skill. Because it takes practice. And you blow it the first time. It doesn't matter if it's athletics, doesn't matter if it's speaking, it doesn't matter what it is. Playing a game for the first time, you don't become a card expert the first time you play. Everything takes practice. But if I keep doing it long enough, it'll become a habit. And habit's what we try to develop. That's what we do. A lot of people say that what we do is we're in the habit-changing business. People have habits or patterns that we've had for 35 years, right? How do we change it? Not going to happen in a minute. It's going to happen with practice and change. I've got to first believe it and then make those changes. So the belief part is a big part for us that keeps, that holds us back. So for those of you today that didn't want anything out of here that had to do with sales, because that's a dirty word, pay attention to this part. We're going to talk about something. I want you to draw something on your page there. It's going to look a little bit like a clock. At the top of the clock, I want you to write the word beliefs. Beliefs. At 3 o'clock, where your clock would be, I want you to write the word judgments. Down here at the bottom of your clock at the 6 o'clock position, I want you to write action or non-action. Up here at the 9 o'clock spot, results. And then that circles back around. So I've got a big circle here. We call this the belief wheel. How many of you have seen this before? Anybody? A couple of folks? Okay. So conceptually, this is what happens. Whatever I believe to be true is going to affect the judgments I make about the opportunities I have in my life. That company's too big. They would never do business with us. The guy, I've met the guy before, he's just his attitude, I don't even want to think about it. I'm not going to do anything with that. So my belief is that that company's not going to do business. My judgment is I'm not going to approach the company. My action or non-action in this case is going to confirm my results would be they're not going to do any business with me, which is going to confirm my beliefs that that person would never do business with us. See how easy that is? Now the reality is that just because I believe that maybe they would do business with us doesn't mean that they will. But if I believe that they won't, it's already dead. I've already lost the opportunity. And that happens every single day. I believe that the people in this room are not the people that I really want to be talking to, blah, blah, blah. They can't introduce me to the people I want to be talking to. Whatever's going on in my mind, I have a tendency to act. I make a judgment. And this is all going on in my subconscious. It's not like I'm sitting there going, okay, well, this is not the right room. I'm not thinking that out, where it's out here tangible to me. It's going on in my subconscious. It's that I'm uncomfortable. I really don't want to be here. I don't know why I have to come to this kind of event. I don't think anything's going to happen here. All those things happen inside. And without me changing the way I believe, my mindset about opportunity, nothing's going to actually happen. So this is a huge part of this human engineering that's on us. And really, as we go and start talking about this process of sales, and something we'll be talking about here in a little bit, is what we call the buyer-seller dance. And you guys have seen these dancing shows on TV, Dancing with the Stars and everything. What's true about a dance? When there's two people dancing, what's true about the dance?
Somebody needs to lead.
Somebody needs to lead. Can't both lead. Now they're both active, they're both involved, but somebody's got to lead the dance. So we'll be talking about that because my belief wheel, that's going to affect on how I approach leading the dance or not. And it's going to definitely make a big difference on my outcomes of what happens to us. So a couple of things you can do with this type of information. There's only three really that I know of. First one is you could say, Dave's genius, I believe everything he says and I could embrace it. And so I'll jot that down in case you want to put that on your paper. I can embrace information. I might think some of the stuff he says I believe, some of the stuff I think is kind of shooey, I don't know. So I might blend it. I might blend the information. But the last thing we can do, and a pretty common thing we can do, is I might defend that information. When I think about this, we have all kinds of information coming from us all day long from 1,000 different sources. We have to filter it someplace. What do you think of these three things? Which is the most likely thing to happen? Defend up, right? So I want you to think about that. That's the information I'll be sharing with you. But when you're talking to somebody, especially when they don't know how to buy what you sell, we think that they understand it because it's so common to us, but we are making assumptions on that. They may be highly uncomfortable. They're going to have a tendency to defend. So part of what we want to do is figure out how do we have an interaction that lowers the defenses and has a better conversation. The way we do that in our world is that we have something that makes sense called a system. I'll give you one more acronym since we're having so much fun. Once you write system on your paper, top to bottom, so you save, SYS, so you save time, energy, and money. So you save time, energy, and money. So let's quickly talk about, when you think about respected vocations, professions where you think that's just a highly respected profession in our country, in our area, what kinds of things do you think of? Physician, sure. Doctor almost always kind of top of the list. What other kinds of vocations do you think of?
Legal.
Legal lawyer. That depends on whose list, but yes,
You have
I agree.
a lawyer.
My dad was a lawyer, so I definitely agree on that one. What else?
Bankers.
Bankers, respected position, bankers, yeah. What else? Clergy, sure. So, when you think about this, I mean, you know, firefighters sometimes on the list, architects or engineers, policemen, teachers, you know, a number of respected professions. Where, if I was going to rate this a 0 to 10 thing, where would sales fall on that list?
12.
At 12. I like it.
Before the politicians.
Right before the politicians, right at the bottom. But yeah, it kind of gets compared sometimes, right? Because we feel the same way. Why do you think that is? What are the emotions that you describe a sales experience for me that would rate them in that kind of a low rating?
Pushy.
Pushy, right? We love being pushed around as clients, right?
Untrusting. Untrusting.
Untrusting and untrustworthy, probably too. Yeah, right. What else?
Trying to get them to part with their money.
Trying to get me to part from my money is what that person's doing. That his job is to take my money from me. Yeah, I think most of us feel that way, and at least intellectually, when we think about the word sales. So I want you to think about a few things that professionals do that salespeople typically do not do. So I want to draw a little comparison here. First thing that they do is they study. If I'm a doctor, if I'm a fireman, if I'm a, you know, you guys right here are doing a little bit of studying right now, but typically in those professions, if I'm in one of those highly respected professions, I'm doing some study. And more likely than not, the second thing that they do that's different is that they invest in themselves. They invest in themselves. They spend time, energy, and money to get better at what they do. If I'm a doctor, I was just recently on a plane to Orlando, and I sat next to a doctor who's got a pain clinic in Chicago. We had a great conversation, but he was flying there to go to a conference. He goes to multiple conferences. He pays out of his pocket. He doesn't ask anybody else, are you going to pay for my thing? He goes and pays out of himself because he wants to get better. He wants to grow. When you think about that in those respective professions, they're investing in themselves all the time to get better. Third thing they do is they practice. They practice. Right? If you showed up at the doctor's office and he said, yeah, I can do that operation for you. I can do it this afternoon. I'm actually looking forward to it. I haven't done that before. It'd be great. What's your confidence level, right? I'm not in there. We want somebody who's done this over and over again in practice. When do most salespeople practice?
While they're doing it.
While they're doing it.
On the job, right? I'm going to try this. I'll try this line. I heard it on the internet. I'm going to say this. And that's typically what we do. We don't practice ahead of time in the sales world. But on those respected professions, they certainly do. Right? And the last thing that they do, is they have systems. They have systems. You ever been to a hospital and gone in for any kind of a treatment? Everything now is systemized. Why? Because they blew it a ton of times and they figured out ways that they could do it better so that they wouldn't blow it. But typically, if I'm talking about sales or trying to have an interaction, I'm not comfortable, they're not comfortable, I'm trying to do something that's outside of my comfort box, and I open my mouth up and it kind of falls apart, and I try to say something or whatever. It feels horrible to me, it tends to feel horrible to them, or I've got my way that I do it. These are the details, this is the way I do it. Everybody needs to know all 21 points of what I do in detail. I'm going to build for them a car. I'm going to describe all the components for somebody who wants to buy a car. Depending on who I'm talking to, I'm going to have a pretty quick disconnect. Nobody wants to know all that stuff. So how do I have better conversations? And in this world, we're going to talk a little bit about, can I actually systemize sales? Instead of just winging it, which is what we have a tendency to do, can I systemize that? What would that look like if I did? Is that fair? Mm-hmm. All right, so what out of what we've talked about today, ACASH, the belief wheel, that acronym for system, what's standing out to you guys?
Well, a system is what stands out, because we all have a system.
We all have a system. Yeah.
Some of the systems are not as good as others and can be improved. That's where you come to things like this to find out what spoke in your system is not working right.
Yeah.
Could be marketing. I mean, if you don't market to the right people, doesn't matter how good your system is. I
Right.
mean, you know, if you sell midget clothes and you're marketing to guys my size, it's not gonna work. Skinny jeans will not fit this body, no matter what I do to it. You know,
Yeah.
so you gotta make sure, but even though I might have a great system of how to sell skinny jeans,
Mhm.
if I'm marketing to people like me, you won't, it doesn't make any difference.
Right.
You're better off just taping $100 bills and throwing them out there at the window and saying, hey, come see me, might get a better result.
And if you went to Kyle and you said, hey, how can we do this? And he said, hey, we're just going to put a bunch of stuff out there. We'll see what happens. How confident will we be? Not too confident. But I think about that with our conversations. We just expect to show up and be brilliant because I'm an expert. Think about this. We talked about some training and the fact that we're going back and investing and doing stuff. If salespeople study, what do they study?
Statistics of your company.
Statistics of your company. As a salesperson?
You should study the statistics of your company.
Okay. So why would we do that?
To know when you put those 50 things out there, which one actually worked for you. If you put it on Facebook, if you put it on Twitter, if you put it on a billboard and you put it on an ad online, which one did
So
you
for the
result?
marketing part, to find out what actually is working so you can make adjustments and go towards the things that work. Absolutely. But when we think about as salespeople in
Psychology,
technology,
psychology.
psychology, well, that's good. I don't get that very often. I like that because you need to know how people's minds works, right? How people think about stuff.
Most salespeople say their product.
Yeah, that's what we see.
That's
Features and advantages and benefits, this is what you should know, you gotta tell them this, you know, and we get drenched in that. And so when we have the opportunity and somebody says, well, what do you do? Blah! Because what I've learned is that this is all the stuff that I do, and I spent a lot of time learning this, and I know all of this stuff, and I can't wait to tell you. And you guys have been underneath that shower before when you've said, what do you do to somebody? And everything that they do, they're trying to tell you all in like one sentence that doesn't end because they don't want to stop and then you not be interested anymore. Because we're so fascinated when we're dumping all that information on us.
And that might work for a middle manager, but when you're talking to a C-level, they don't care about any of those things. They want to know what problem you're going to solve, how you're going to make their life better. They give no shits about what version of Windows it runs on.
That's right. What's the answer to the problem? That's great. Well, that'll help us. So we're going to take a little walk through what I call the buyer-seller dance. First of all, just give you a little framework around system. Why would we have a system? What would be the benefit of having a system?
Save time, energy, and money.
Save time, energy, and money. Right? I'm having a system because I want to get to an outcome. I want you to think about the interactions that you have. This can be with your family, this can be with people that you work with, this can be with a sales outcome. But typically, in our world, people have very murky, unclear outcomes of all of their interactions. And they think they're clear in their mind, but they find out later on that we weren't clear in our mind because that person certainly didn't have the same idea. Or I've had a great, and it can look like this in a sales interaction. That was absolutely fantastic. Aaron, that was like one of the best presentations I ever had. I'm going to think about that, and I'm going to get with my sister. My sister's brother's got a cousin, and he is really like knowledgeable about advising people and stuff like that. And we're going to meet in summer at a vacation that we're going to go to, and we'll set up some time to visit about it in the fall, and I'll let you know. But that was the best we've seen. Thank you so much. All right. Anybody seen stuff like that where it just seems like, this is ridiculous. Is anybody going to ever answer me a real question? But at the end of my interaction, I haven't set them up so that we'll have an actual interaction where we have an outcome. Although we always have an outcome. But I've allowed them to lead the dance. And so the outcome is whatever they want the outcome to be. And we think to be a nice salesperson and not be a pushy salesperson, that's the way we should approach it. Is that frustrating? Does that leave us frustrated at the end of those outcomes? Because like, we're going to think about it, we're going to get back to you, send us a proposal, a bid, or quote, or something. And it goes out there and it floats out in Never Never Land. There's 4 things, and you can jot this down on the same part of your sheet there. It's actually, you can turn the page a little bit if you want to. With the next section we have on, you've got a little section there on system. So I want you to just jot down 4 things, because here's the 4 things that can come out of our interaction. I can get a yes. I like yeses. Right? I can get a no. I like no's. No's are great. If I'm gonna get a no, when would I like to get a no? Now or 6 months from now?
Really?
I wanna know now, right? And so if somebody's gonna be a no, in our world, I'd just like to know it's gonna be a no, and I won't spend time, I won't waste your time, I won't waste my time. But that's not typically what we see. Most of the clients that we work with, they have these long sales cycles, they've got a ton of people in there that have functionally said no, but haven't actually out of their mouth said no, so they think that's still a client, and they continue to chase and waste time, energy, and money doing that. What's the other things I can get?
Maybe.
Maybe later.
I could get a maybe. If I allow a maybe, that can be a possible outcome for me. We'll come back to that in a second. What other things I can get?
Not now.
Not now. And that's a think it over kind of a thing, right? Those are the ones that we love. I want to think it over, I want to give you a maybe. I want to leave this as ambiguous as possible because I'm in control anyway and you're my servant as the salesperson, so I'm happy to do that because I don't want to hurt your feelings. And that's typically what it is. So I can get a yes, I can get a no, I can get a referral. Because just because I can't help this person, and this is a crazy, crazy thing to me, just because they don't want to buy what I want, we take that as like, we failed, they don't like me, I'm going to leave now. But it may be that they've got 6 cars, I'm trying to sell them a car, they don't need a car. They don't need what I have. But they might have heard something and said, is there somebody in your world that would appreciate knowing about what we talked about? A lot of times it's going to be no, but most people are never going to ask the question. We get a referral. The last thing we can get is a clear next step. This is what's going to happen next. This is the time, the date, this is exactly what's going to happen. Not, I'm going to call you next week. That's not clear. Because that means I'm going to get into that thing where I'm calling and chasing, and that's going to make me crazy, and it's going to make them crazy, trying to get a hold of somebody. Clear next step is I will call you. When would you like me to call you? Next week. What day next week? What's a good day for you? Well, Tuesday's good. Okay, about what time? I've got my calendar out here. About what time on Tuesday would you like me to call you? 2 o'clock. If you guys will write that down on your hot list, if that's a problem that you have, you will solve a ton of complications in your world because most people won't follow through and set up that next connection if there's a clear next step. In our world, we don't have the in-between thing because at the end of our time together, beginning of our time together, we say, at the end of our time, it's okay to say yes. In our world, it's okay to say no. And if it's no, I'm okay with that. And it's okay for us to have a clear next step. But let's just agree up front that at the end of our time together, that to think it over is kind of a nice Oklahoma way to say no. And since I'm okay with a no, then we'll just leave it at that. But we'll have a yes or a no or a clear next step. Does that seem fair? And everybody says, that seems fair. Because I've laid that out and laid those ground rules up front, is that fair for me to ask at the very end when they say, well, we want to think it over? Well, I understand that. So what would be the clear next step? Because we agreed that we'd have a yes or a no or a clear next step. And it takes the think it overs off the table.
Dave, I have a question on that.
Shoot.
On the think it overs though, but I hear that from some clients that I've had in the past, and a lot of time when I do get a think it over, it's usually they want to shop, and B, on something like that, I usually set up just a 1 follow-up in a week. And then if it's still, usually in a week they'll know, oh no, we've decided to not do that, or we've decided to go a different direction. Great, fine, because I've closed deals on doing that week follow-up, even on, let us think about it, or we'll think it over.
Yeah, so it's perfectly fine. If you're comfortable inside that system and that's what you want to operate in, that's fine. But call next week, ambiguous, this probably never happened to you, but others of us have called when they, the next week, and they called the week after that, and called the week after that, and the week after that, right? So let's talk about how that kind of plays out. We're going to talk about the buyer-seller dance, and this is, we alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I'm just talk through the steps of that. There's a traditional seller system. So on your spot there, you've got on the top of your page on the right-hand side over there, should be a traditional system outlined on your deal. So the first thing that is part of the traditional system is that you want to generate interest. So you're number 1 there. Everybody find that okay? So you want to generate interest. So we do that through marketing. We do that through the little dancy things that stand up on the corner and fill up with air. all kinds of things to generate interest. That's the first step. Once somebody responds to us doing something like that, the number two thing that we want to do is we want to present. Think about that. That's what we do. Somebody says, "What do you do, Aaron?" Oh, and we go into present mode, right? They asked me. They've responded to me generating interest. I didn't tell them what I do. Number three thing that happens for us is that once you've presented, what do you naturally do if you're a good salesperson?
Ask for the sale.
Ask for the sale. And go for the close. So I say, well, do you want to go ahead and get it, Beth? And you say,
Yeah.
I love it. Yes, I want it.
Sign me up.
And sometimes they say, well, I'll think about it, or I would, but it's too expensive, or I would, but it's not the right color, and I would, but it needs to be this. And they have objections. What do we do with objections?
You handle it.
That's right, we handle them, we overcome them, we smack them down. No objections I can't handle, right? And you guys have seen that, probably that little game with the little moles that jump up, the whack-a-mole thing. I've heard Mike describe it like this. That's what an objection's like. Bam! You just kind of, I'm all prepared. I'm going to smack them down because whatever their reasons are, they're not good enough to overcome me, and I'm going to beat them up. Who's the only person that can overcome their own objections?
Yep.
The person. But that's what we do. We typically fight about that. We overcome objections. And then the last thing that we do, if the close doesn't work, is what?
Follow up.
Chase. We chase. Now, you guys probably never feel like this. But some of us in the world feel like that. I'm chasing the person that they're never responding to me. They said they were going to respond. They said they were really interested. They said it was the best presentation they'd ever heard. But for some reason, they just disappeared off the planet. I don't know what happened to them. This is what I want you guys to see primarily here. This is us. So now I want you to put your buyer shoes on. Not your sales folks' shoes. I want you to put your buyer shoes on. When we go into a situation where we want to buy something, we have what we've developed as our defense mechanisms, right? We have a defensive mode that we go into because we don't, all those things we said earlier, right? I don't want to be taken advantage of, the person's untrustworthy. We don't want to get taken advantage of. So we have our own defense mechanism that we use. So when I engage somebody, I'm typically going to mislead them. Well, think about that. What do you mean by that, David? Well, I talked to somebody this morning, and they said that they had called up an insurance agent, and they had a conversation with the insurance agent, and the reason they did that is they were looking for business. And I said, well, do you have insurance? Yeah. Did you tell me I had insurance? No, I told them I didn't have any insurance. Beth is stunned. But occasionally in the world, as shoppers, we will want to see what other people are doing and kind of feel out the marketplace. We might actually mislead somebody. Probably has never happened to you guys. But in our world, it can be like this, somebody's a banker. Oh, I already got a banker. Somebody sells insurance. I got an insurance person for sure. Now, they may not have an insurance person, they may be online, they may not have any banker, may have nothing, but that's just the self-defense mechanism. So what does that look like? That looks like misleading somebody.
So you're saying buyers are liars?
I am.
Absolutely.
I am. Right? But what do they want? They do want something typically, and what they want to do is they want to gather information. They want to gather info. And if you want to present and they want to gather, how does that work out? Good. Works out great. It's great for their system. We get brochures, you get presentation. Yeah, give me your stuff. Sure, I'll take all your stuff. Fantastic. I get all the stuff. I'm very happy to have the stuff because I'm on my research mode. I'm gathering information. When we go into the close mode, what do you think happens to them?
Defend.
They commit to nothing. That's a primary thing. Even when somebody wants to buy something, I'll give you an example. We're in a furniture store. There's a furniture store that you know, you've seen their ads, you've gone online, you see the product that you want. It's a beautiful red 8-foot couch. It's perfect for your room. You've wanted one for 6 years. You go to the bank, you pull out $2,500 in cash money. You walk into the store and 400 salespeople are there, and you're walking and somebody comes up to you and says, "Can I help you?" And you say,
No, thank you. Just
"Nope.
looking.
No, thank you, just looking." Right? That's that mislead kind of deal, right? Because we're afraid we're going to have somebody take advantage of us. But I'm also not going to commit to anything. We have a tendency, we might walk out of the store just because I just feel uncomfortable about buying something seems wrong. Our senses, we're not comfortable in our subconscious, so we've got all these little alarms going on. And then, the last thing they do is hide. It's hide. And that's what's happening on the other end of that chase. Because they're getting the calls, they're getting the messages, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to reject you. They want you to feel bad. They don't want to have the conversation. They don't want to make a decision. And it doesn't mean that they don't even want what you've got. They just got a lot of stuff in their life, just like you guys do. Think about that as a buyer. You got a lot of stuff in your life you're dealing with. You're making decisions about. You're spending stuff on. You're taking care of your kids. And yeah, that's kind of in the background. I do want to get that thing fixed, and I want to get that done. But it's not urgent for you right now, so we just let it float out there and don't do anything about it. So I'm going to share with you a different way to approach that. And this is the thing that I hope you'll take a little bit away today. Because in this, here's what happens. If I was to say what this was, if I mislead somebody, what is that?
Lie.
It's a lie. If I take something, if I gather information, if I take something from somebody and I don't pay for it, what do we call that?
Stealing.
Steal. Commit to nothing. Whether I want to do it or not, I commit to nothing. It's really kind of another lie. The last thing we do is we hide. In our world, this is what we see. That is the system that we see from most buyers. I spoke at the Oklahoma Roofing Contractors Association a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this same subject. And there was a room full of a ton of guys that were roofers, and one of the guys came up to me afterwards, and he's looking at us, he goes, "That's exactly what we do! That's exactly what you do." And I want you to think about real world, this is what we do. Generate interest, tell them all about our stuff, and try to close. I put all of the pressure, all of the emotional, psychological pressure of everything that's going to happen, all on me, overcoming whatever objections they come up with so that they will say yes, and I will get my answer. I might do it nicer than I'm representing, but that's what I want. Because if I get a sale, I'm a winner. And if I don't get a sale, I'm a loser. And that's a bad way to mess up your psychology and your brain. And really, for the value of a human being, it's a bad way to send yourself home at the end of a day thinking I'm just a loser. Because that's what it feels like. So quickly here, so we've got about 15 minutes left, I'm going to take you through a different way to do the buyer-seller's dance. Who's in charge here? Who's running the show?
Buyer.
Buyer, 100%. We hate to say it because we think, well, I know all my stuff though, and I'm dazzling and I'm charismatic and I can just tell them all my stuff, and a lot of times they buy, because they will buy. People still buy stuff. But how many here close 100%? How many 70%? Right? How many would like to close more? That's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out what's the gap. Where are we at in our terms of our effectiveness, and where's that gap? So a few things to think about. So our step, I want you to put a 0 above the one that you've got in your page right there. You've got that 1 through 7 down at the bottom where it says Sandler System. I want you to put a 0 up there. And I want you to write next to that, pattern interrupt. Pattern interrupt. Here's what I mean by that. Most of us are used to doing business with people who do business the same way every time, all the time. If I go up and ask you what you do, you tell me. If you've been to any kind of a networking meeting and you said, you know, what do you do? And you give your 30-second commercial, you stand up and you tell me all the features, advantages, and benefits and services that you have. So that I can take out my little imaginary label maker and punch in, this is a person who does insurance sales, and stick it on your forehead and label you and move on, because I'm just figuring out how to categorize that in my mind. There's nothing that's appealed to me on that because I've just listed the same list that 19 other people are going to give me in the next few minutes as I go around the room. So what do I do that's different if I meet with somebody?
Ask
Kind
them. Ask what they do.
That's a great way to start, and I totally agree with that. Give you a little bit of a different way to start on this one, and this is just somebody gets started with something. And Kyle was to come to David and say, why should I buy from you, David? I could say something like, well, Kyle, I have no idea if you should buy from me. I really don't know that much about your business or what you do or what you want to get or what your challenges are. I'm sure if we took a few minutes, we could sit down and talk about it and figure out if it makes sense or not for us to visit further. But I don't know that you should do any business with me. Unless you've talked to somebody who's been to Sandler, I don't think you've probably talked to anybody that said that. Because the reality is everybody's going to tell you exactly why you should do business with them as confidently and as boldly as they can. So if I want to be different, and if I want to be treated differently, I have to act differently. That's part of the deal, right? I've got to act differently. So pattern interrupt, just something to think about. I don't know that you should do business with me. I have no real idea of what you're looking to accomplish, and if I'm the right person to help you do that. But if we sat down and took a few minutes to visit about it, I'm sure we can find out.
It's an amazing tool to get people
Yeah.
to stop defending.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's really the big part of it. And that's a great way to start. That number one, that's bonding and rapport on your sheet, guys. Put down bonding and rapport. And to what Kyle said, bonding and rapport is about subconscious comfort. Subconscious comfort. Because if I'm comfortable with you, if I like you, if you're like me and we like the same things and I feel comfortable with your personality, I don't think you're too aggressive or too soft or whatever it is that if we connect, I'm much, much more likely to do business. Most people could do so much better if they would just start better. But we don't do that. We might take some time to talk about fishing or camping or the thunder or the other extraneous small talk that 90% of the people in the world hate, to have some kind of bonding rapport. But if I can learn how to do that part better, I can begin to lower some of those subconscious defense mechanisms. So we call that B&R, bonding and rapport. The next one we call an upfront contract. Upfront contract, probably the greatest tool. I'm going to give you a real simple way, just an outline for this, guys, as we get started, but probably the greatest tool I've ever seen used for people that have come to us. It sounds super simple, and conceptually it is. It's kind of hard to do, but it's not super hard to do. And this is all your interactions, whether it's with your wife, amen for this one, or your kids, or your business associates, or my employees, or my employer. If I start out with, there's 5 components of this. You guys can scribble them on the side if you want to. But the first one is, what's the purpose of us getting together? Have you ever gone to a meeting and nobody has any idea why you're getting together? You've gotten in there, you know that there's a meeting set up and there's some vague agenda, but you have no idea what's going to happen during the meeting. Pretty common. But between just 2 human beings, a lot of times you're meeting together, you don't know why you're there. So just announce what that is and get agreement on it. Now, upfront contract in our world is an agreement where we mutually agree on what's going to happen during our conversation. So the first question I'm going to ask is, what do you want out of our time together? I want their agenda. So the second component is their agenda. The third component is my agenda. I'm actually going to tell them what I want. I want to see if they're a good fit for our services or our products. And maybe I'm going to give them an example of some things that they might ask me or things that I might ask them. The fourth thing is the logistics, like the time. How many of you guys keep calendars that have start times on your calendars? Most of us. How many of you, on purpose and not default because it happens to be an Outlook, have scheduled the stop time of those appointments? There's a ton of us got a bunch of start times, and we assume that a meeting is the same in our world as it is in somebody else's world. If a meeting in their world is 30 minutes and we keep scheduling them out for an hour, that's going to get uncomfortable really quick. The last thing is the outcome, and we just talked about that. If I say up front yes or no, or clear next step, or referral, but let's just agree that think it over is just a really nice way to say no, and I'm okay with a no. Is that okay with you? That's the upfront contract. Super great way to make a simple conversation and mean I can conclude it. I know the time. It's a set of rails for me to run on where I'm not trying to just feel the whole thing out. We know what we're doing. We know what our agenda is. We've agreed on it together mutually. Next one is what we call a pain conversation. And pain in our world, if you want to write this next to this, because that might not be an acronym or anything that make any sense to you, it's an emotionally compelling reason to do something. Emotionally compelling reason to do something. Interest is not an emotionally compelling reason to do something. People do not make a purchase because they're interested. We make decisions emotionally and we justify them intellectually. We think about the stuff that you bought, whatever the reasons were, whether it was to protect you from pain or to provide some pleasure for you, whatever those reasons were, they were emotionally compelling most of the time. It's not because I was interested. So my conversation needs to move from the interest level to really what are the emotionally compelling reasons that's going to make somebody's afraid they're going to be embarrassed because they're going to hire the wrong person. They're afraid that they're going to feel stupid in front of you. There's things that are going on underneath the skin suit that are emotional, that are the reasons people are going to say yes. If somebody comes in and they've got a broken leg, they're not shopping for services. They're going to the closest hospital to get somebody to fix the pain that they have. So that's why we use the word pain, because it's the most compelling emotional reason for somebody to do something. And it can be pleasure or pain, pleasure in the future, pleasure now, pleasure, pain in the future, pain now. Those are compelling. The next thing we're going to do, that's their reasons. What reasons do they have to do that? The next thing we're going to ask about in our world is we're going to ask about budget. Who likes to do business with people who have no money and can't pay? Is there anybody here that wants to do that? We work with a ton of nonprofits. Do you think that they want to do stuff with folks that have no capacity? It's not that they can't pay. They'll provide for that. They've got to be able to have money to make the thing work. That's how things work. So if somebody doesn't have any money to pay for the services that they're asking me about and not going to be able to purchase what I have, do I want to find out now or do I want to find out later? In our world, instead of getting down the road later and finding out, we do that. So budget is what somebody is willing and able to invest. Willing and able to invest. What that means to you and to me is that it's time, energy, and money they're able to invest. The next one is decision. This is where people, especially in the technology world, this is where it gets lost. So we want to get a bunch of people involved. So in our world, we have to ask 5 questions, and they're the journalism's questions. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Ask those, not just who's the decision maker, because that's almost never right, and it can be really offensive. But who else besides yourself is involved in a decision like this? Can you walk me through the process and make sure to discover who, what, when, where, why, and how? Save yourself a ton of grief and discover if they can actually make a decision. If they pass the test of those 3 things, they qualify. If you've discovered a need you can meet at a price they can afford and a decision process that they can operate with, then I can do this stuff and tell them about what we do. Because I've discovered what it is that they need help with. And in our world, that's called fulfillment. I'm going to put these together. Fulfillment is, in our world, honestly, probably everybody I've talked to, I can't think of an exception to this, has said, after I finish these 3 steps, what do you want to do now? What do you want to do now? And their question is well, how do we get started? That's pretty much it. The last one is post-sell. How do I keep this from falling apart? Why are you doing this? And turn it around, give the check back to you, give the contract back to you. Why are you spending the money with me, Aaron? And let you tell me why you're doing it. Because the reality is there could be some reasons that don't make sense and could create some problems for us. So that is the Sandler system. We're up to about 5 minutes beforehand.